But now the lesson begins in verse 28. Because here's the application. But that servant went out, found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii, and he laid hands on him, not to pray for him. Taking him by the throat, he said, "Pay me what you owe." Now his fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, "Have patience with me, I will pay you all." But he would not, but instead went and threw him into prison until he should pay the debt. The actions of this servant, if you read them carefully, would seem to me to be absolutely incredible, right? Absurd. Who in their right mind would walk out having just been forgiven a debt that you could never have paid, and the first thing he does is to purposely go out and find someone to terrorize with debt? Hey, you owe me some money, get over here. And with the authority that he has over him, he makes a case against this guy, makes threats against him after having just been freely forgiven by the king. And that's exactly the point that God is interested in. Because this was the fellow servant. Notice, a fellow servant, a fellow doulos, a fellow bondslave. Here was a fellow that had received forgiveness from the king just as he had, the one that was in the same shoes as he was, the one that was standing in the same place that he had stood. But he went out to find another servant of the king so that he might hurt him, while at the same time claiming forgiveness. He wanted justice for this man. All in the same context of loving life in the body together as one and valuing the life of the saints as God does, based solely upon what God has given to you. Now, if you notice in verse 29, the response of this fellow in debt to this servant was literally word for word what the fellow had just been mouthing to the king back in verse 26. You know, the only thing that separated the two was a couple of hours and the enormity of the debt. This servant was strangled. 100 denarii was about $20. So $20 set against multiple millions, you know. And he lays his hand on him. He demands the debt be paid immediately. No time to be wasted. Grave consequence of everything you count dear. And absolutely no grace. $20 versus hundreds of millions. In fact, you know, just on the standpoint of the emotional or on the physical end of this parable, the guy could have paid $20 back over time. You know, that wasn't an insurmountable debt. He could literally have worked that off, made that right, you know, set up a payment plan, whatever, with interest if necessary. But here's the lesson, and it's one of those simple lessons that is profoundly important, and it is this: if you consider the enormous debt God has forgiven you in Christ, from that day forward, whatever you are required to shoulder or bear or forgive in the lives of people who offend you, even if they do it constantly, is nothing by comparison. It's the $20 billion comparison, you know? It's the 100 denarii versus the tens of thousands of talents. And restoration for us ought to be very simple, considering all that we have been given by the King. Verse 30 gives you this tremendous lack of compassion. It's the appalling part of the story, because this guy is absolutely unrelenting, without mercy, no patience, absolutely devoid of kindness or compassion. He wants his pound of flesh now, and don't give me any trouble. Now, unfortunately, that's what the Lord is seeking to address with us. We are so good at going to the Lord for mercy and grace. We love when we go to pray, "God forgive me," and walking away going, "God forgave me." How do you know? Jesus died for me. East is from the west, remembers them no more. I got all those scriptures memorized. 1 John 1:9, if I confess my sins. And then I get to you, and I don't want mercy or grace. I want justice. Lord, deal with them. Show them how wrong they are. Give them what they deserve. And what about you? Oh, Lord, I need mercy. I need grace. They need a hammer and a slap to the side of the head and public exposure and public chastisement, you know, and they need to be made an example of. Oh, but me, God, I need grace and mercy. And them, oh. And I become this horrible guy in the story who got off the hook with murder, so to speak, and will not let off the hook anyone who in the least way has offended me, or owes me, or I them.